After 20 years of service in the human fleet, he had seen too many battles, too many comrades buried under foreign suns, and too many flags raised in hollow victory. When his commission ended, he bought a small homestead on the edge of the colony world Valen III. It was a quiet place, half forests and half rocky plains, with storms that rolled across the horizon like endless drums. He thought it was the perfect place to disappear from the galaxy and let the noise of war fade. The colony was small, no more than 2,000 people scattered in settlements across a wide valley. Everyone worked to survive. Farmers, miners, mechanics, traders. Elias was respected but kept his distance. He sold the crops from his small hydro field and occasionally repaired old engines for neighbors. Still, most days he was alone in the cabin he had built with his own hands. That night a storm came in harder than usual. The winds howled against the shutters, and the sky flashed with twin bolts of green lightning. Elias sat by the fire reading an old printed book, one of the few luxuries he had kept. His rifle leaned against the wall nearby, habit more than necessity. Then came the sound. It was not the wind nor the crack of thunder. It was softer, like claws scraping weakly at wood. Elias frowned. He stood, took his lantern, and unbarred the heavy door. On the threshold lay a figure. At first he thought it was a child, small, thin, curled on the cold planks. But when the lantern light fell on her, he saw she was no child and not human either. She had furred ears on top of her head, flattened against the storm. A long, thin tail twitched weakly behind her. Her eyes, though half-closed, gleamed with a golden glow that caught the lantern light. Her body was shivering, skin pale and marked with scratches, and she had no clothing to shield her from the biting wind. Elias froze for half a breath. Then instinct pushed him forward. He dropped to one knee and reached out carefully. The girl flinched, a faint hiss leaving her throat, but she was too weak to resist. "You're freezing," Elias muttered, though he knew she could not understand him. He lifted her in his arms. She was light, too light, as if she had gone days without food. Inside, he laid her by the fire and quickly wrapped her in a thick blanket. He boiled water and mixed a broth from preserved meat and grains, setting the bowl near her. The girl sniffed at it with suspicion, but hunger soon broke her hesitation. She drank in quick gulps, spilling half yet not stopping until the bowl was empty. When she finally looked at him, her golden eyes were sharp despite exhaustion. She crouched low, muscles tense under the blanket as if ready to leap away. Elias raised his hands slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. His voice was calm, the same tone he had once used to steady young recruits in battle. "You're safe here. Understand? Safe." Of course, she did not answer. Hours passed. The storm raged on, but inside the cabin there was warmth. The girl remained silent, watching every move Elias made. She did not speak, only growled softly when he came too close. Still, she did not try to leave the fire's warmth, nor did she refuse the second bowl of broth he placed near her. Elias studied her quietly. He had seen many alien species during his service, but never one quite like this. Her features were humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, familiar proportions, but the ears, tail, and faint patterns on her skin were feline in nature. Her hands had sharp nails, almost claws. She was wild and graceful even in weakness. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why was she alone, unclothed and half-starved on his doorstep in the middle of a storm? Elias had learned long ago not to dismiss strange events. Coincidence was rare at the edge of human space. Something had driven her here, something dangerous enough that she had risked collapse at a stranger's home. The next morning, the storm had broken. The valley was washed clean, sunlight cutting across the wet fields. Elias found the girl awake, curled tightly in the blanket, staring at the fire as if it were an enemy. When he approached, she bared her teeth faintly, a defensive gesture. Elias crouched and picked up a loaf of bread. He tore a piece off, ate it in front of her, then set another piece down and slid it toward her. She hesitated, sniffed, then snatched it quickly and devoured it. "Good," Elias said softly. He repeated the gesture with water. Little by little, a routine formed, but communication was a wall. She did not speak his language, and Elias did not know hers. He tried gestures, pointing, miming actions, but she only tilted her head with frustration. It was like trying to speak to a half-wild animal who was clever enough to understand but unwilling to show it. Still, Elias was patient. He had spent years in command, guiding frightened recruits, steadying nervous crews. He knew trust was not won in a single day. That afternoon, as he repaired a broken water pump outside, he noticed her watching from the doorway. She was still wrapped in the blanket, clutching it tightly, but her ears twitched with curiosity at the sound of his tools. Elias deliberately slowed his work, showing her each action. He tightened a bolt, then stepped back, holding the spanner up. She tilted her head. Carefully, almost hesitantly, she stepped closer and pointed at the tool. Elias placed it in her hand. Her grip was awkward, but she mimicked his motions, twisting the bolt. When it turned smoothly, her golden eyes widened slightly in surprise. Elias gave a short nod. Good. For the first time, she did not pull away from him immediately. A fragile crack in her wall of fear. Days passed like this. Slowly, the girl grew stronger. Elias offered clothes from his storage, simple worker's fabric, but she refused, wrapping herself only in the blanket. She moved silently, her steps light and careful, as though years of instinct told her never to make a sound. At night, Elias sometimes woke to find her sitting by the window, eyes scanning the dark horizon as if expecting pursuers. Whoever she had fled from, they still haunted her. One evening, after another silent meal, she surprised him by touching her chest and speaking a single word. Her voice was low, almost like a growl. Kara. Elias looked at her, realizing. A name, Kara, he repeated carefully. Her ears flicked, and for the first time, the tension in her shoulders eased just slightly. But trouble was never far on frontier worlds. 2 days later, while Elias was in the settlement trading for supplies, he overheard miners speaking nervously. Strange tracks in the woods, one said. Not animal. Looked like patrol boots. Imperial make. Elias's blood ran cold. The Zereth Dominion, an alien empire notorious for slavery, controlled nearby sectors. If their patrols were here, it was no accident. And if Kara had fled from them, it meant she was in great danger. And so was anyone who sheltered her. When Elias returned home, Kara met him at the door. She had sensed his unease before he spoke. Her golden eyes locked on his, sharp and questioning. Elias sighed. Looks like trouble is coming, girl. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Her tail lashed once, and her claws flexed against the wooden frame of the door. For the first time, Elias wondered if by taking her in, he had not only saved her life but also invited a storm far worse than the one that had brought her to his doorstep. Yet, as he looked at her, alone, hunted but fiercely alive, he felt a resolve he had not known in years. Whatever storm was coming, he would not abandon her, not now, not ever. This one would not be born from clouds or lightning. It would come from men, or worse, the Dominion soldiers who treated entire species as property. He had seen their patrols before during his service, and he knew the kind of shadow they left wherever they walked. Ruthless, efficient, and cruel. If they were sniffing around the colony, then Kara's presence was not just chance. She was the reason. Building trust life in the cabin took on a fragile rhythm. Elias woke early, as always, to tend the hydrofield, repair tools, or hunt small game in the forest. Kara followed him now, though at a cautious distance. She moved with a strange mix of wariness and curiosity. She did not trust him fully yet, but she no longer shrank into the corner when he approached. Communication remained the hardest barrier. Elias spoke in short words, clear gestures. He pointed to himself. Elias. She repeated it clumsily, her tongue unused to the sound. Elias, he pointed to her. She hesitated, then answered softly. Kara. Each day they added more words. Food, water, fire, tool, sky. Elias saw her hunger for learning. She repeated words under her breath, ears twitching in concentration. It reminded him of young recruits learning signals in the fleet. Only this time there was no army, no drills, only two people trying to build a bridge of language. Elias admired her sharpness. She was cautious, but when she decided to try something, she learned fast. He showed her how to split firewood with a hatchet. The first swing was awkward, but the second hit true. He demonstrated how to reset a water filter. She studied each motion, then copied it almost exactly. At meals, she watched how he used a knife, then tried it herself. Small victories, one after another. Sometimes, though, her instincts broke through. Once, when a hawk swooped too close to the cabin roof, Kara hissed, crouched low, and her claws slid out before she even thought. Elias raised a brow but said nothing. She flushed with something close to shame and turned away. He understood. Habits of survival could not be erased in a week. Echoes of fear, though Kara was growing stronger, the nights revealed her scars. More than once, Elias woke to the sound of muffled cries. He found her curled in the blanket, trembling, golden eyes wide with terror at visions only she could see. He did not touch her. He knew sudden closeness might break her trust. Instead, he sat nearby, speaking low words until her breathing slowed. Sometimes she listened, sometimes not. But gradually the nightmares eased enough that she could rest again. One night she surprised him. After waking from another dream, she whispered a word in her language. He did not understand, but her tone was heavy with pain. She touched her throat, then made a gesture of chains around her wrists. Elias's chest tightened. He knew that gesture anywhere. Slavery. He crouched in front of her, speaking slowly. "No chains here, not here. You are free." She tilted her head as if struggling to believe, but then she whispered his name, softly like it was a rope keeping her from falling. Elias. Shadows in the settlement. 2 days later, Elias traveled to the settlement again, this time leaving Kara behind. He needed supplies, extra food, new power cells, and medicine in case her wounds worsened. The market square was busy, full of voices, carts, and traders. But under the noise, Elias noticed tension. People whispered more than usual, eyes glancing toward the outskirts. At the tavern, old miner Corin leaned close. "You've heard, haven't you?" Elias frowned. "Heard what?" "Dominion patrol. A frigate landed near the ridge 3 nights ago. Their scouts are in the woods. They say they're searching for an escaped asset." Corin spat. "Asset means a person to them, doesn't it?" Elias stayed quiet, but his thoughts turned sharp. The Dominion rarely crossed human colonies openly. For them to risk it here meant the runaway was valuable or dangerous. Corin lowered his voice further. "Word is they're sniffing for help, offering credits for information. Some folks are thinking of talking." Elias felt heat rise in his chest. Credits made people foolish. One whisper, one wrong word, and Kara would be dragged back in chains. He bought his supplies quickly and left before more questions came. First steps of Bond back at the cabin, Kara was waiting. She had tried to cook something, roots and herbs gathered near the woods. The attempt was clumsy, the taste sharp, but Elias ate it without complaint. When he smiled faintly, Kara's ears lifted in pride. After dinner, he showed her something new, his old harmonica. It was dented, worn from years of travel, but still worked. He played a simple tune, soft and low. Kara's eyes widened. She leaned closer, listening intently, her tail swaying with the rhythm. When he stopped, she touched the harmonica, then tapped her chest. "Kara, play?" Elias chuckled. "Try." She pressed it to her lips and blew. The sound was awful at first, making her laugh for the first time since he'd met her. Her laughter was strange, more like a rolling purr, but it filled the cabin with warmth. For that moment, the shadows of pursuit felt far away. Warning signs, the peace did not last. 2 nights later, Elias noticed lights in the distant hills, unnatural, moving in patterns. Patrol lamps, Dominion. He watched from the window, his jaw tight. Kara joined him, her body going rigid the instant she saw. She hissed low, fur on her ears bristling. "They're looking for you," Elias said quietly. "Aren't they?" She lowered her gaze, guilt heavy in her posture. She whispered a single word in her tongue, but the tone said enough. "Hunted," Elias thought carefully. He could send her away. It would protect the colony and himself. But the thought of her alone in the wilderness, hunted by Dominion soldiers, sat like lead in his stomach. No, he couldn't do it. Instead, he began to prepare. Lessons of survival. Elias decided Kara needed more than food and shelter. She needed skills, human skills. He began teaching her the basics of his rifle. At first she resisted, ears flattened, unwilling to touch it. But Elias showed her calmly, explaining each piece, each function. She was a quick learner, though her hands trembled at first. By the 3rd day, she could aim and fire at a tree trunk, the recoil startling but not breaking her focus. "Good," Elias said firmly. "Again." She obeyed, sharper each time. He also showed her how to use comms, how to operate a scanner, and how to rig simple traps around the cabin. She seemed almost relieved to have purpose. It reminded him that she had been trained before, not in human ways, but as something else. A tool for the Dominion, perhaps. Now she was learning to be something more. The confrontation, the warning came sooner than Elias expected. One evening, as the sun dipped low, 2 Dominion scouts appeared at the edge of the field. Clad in dark armor, their helmets glowed faintly as they scanned the area. Elias stepped outside calmly, rifle across his back. "This is private property. State your business." The lead scout's voice was flat through the translator. "We are searching for a fugitive. A bioasset belonging to the Dominion, female, dangerous. If you have seen such a creature, report immediately." Elias's face was stone. "Haven't seen anything like that. And you're trespassing on human colony land. You should leave." The scout's visor tilted. "Be advised, human. Concealment of Dominion property is punishable." Elias held his ground. "This is not Dominion territory. You have no authority here." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then the scouts turned, muttering into their comms, and walked back toward the woods. Only when they were gone did Elias release his breath. Inside, Kara had seen everything. Her golden eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something else. Hope, a promise that night. As firelight flickered in the cabin, Kara approached Elias. She touched his arm, then pointed to herself, shaking her head. She was trying to say, "I am not safe to keep here. I bring danger." Elias looked at her, seeing the scars of fear and flight in every line of her face. He shook his head slowly. "No chains. Not here, you stay. Understand? You stay." Her throat worked as if holding back words she could not yet form. At last she whispered the only one she could, "Elias." For the first time, she leaned against him, just briefly, like a cat trusting a hand it once feared. And Elias knew then, whatever storm the Dominion brought, he would face it. Not because it was his duty, but because no human left another to chains. Not ever. The valley was quiet, but Elias felt the silence was wrong. It was the kind of silence he had learned to fear during his years in the fleet. The silence before a strike. The Dominion scouts had left his farm, yet Elias knew it was only the beginning. They would be back, not as 2 men searching fields, but as squads armed and ready. He had bought time, nothing more. Kara sensed it too. She paced the cabin at night, tail lashing, ears flicking at the smallest sounds outside. Sometimes she crouched at the window, golden eyes glowing faintly as she watched the forest's edge. Elias didn't blame her. If the Dominion had hunted her this far, they would not give up easily. To them, she was not Kara. She was an asset, a tool they believed they owned. And he had just told them no. The colony's unease. When Elias next visited the settlement, he felt eyes on him. People greeted him politely, but whispers followed. He heard fragments, stranger, runaway. Why risk the Dominion's anger? At the market, Corin the miner pulled him aside. "You're hiding something, aren't you? Dominion soldiers don't sniff around farms unless they're after someone specific." Elias kept his face calm. "I mind my own business," Corin grunted. "Well, you'd better. Word is, the Dominion captain met with the council. They say if we don't cooperate, there'll be consequences. And some folks are already thinking of trading names for credits." Elias's jaw tightened. Fear and greed, 2 weapons sharper than any blade. He had seen empires bend worlds with both. On his way out, he stopped at the supply post. The owner, a broad woman named Risa, slipped him an extra power cell without charge. "For your tools," she said quietly, though her eyes told a different story. "Keep your head down, Elias." He gave a small nod. She suspected something too, but unlike others, she wasn't ready to betray him. Training in earnest back at the farm, Elias decided caution was no longer enough. If the Dominion came, they had to be ready to fight. He brought out his old training drones, small hovering machines used for practice fire. Kara's eyes lit up as they buzzed to life. "Target," Elias explained, pointing to the drone. He lifted his rifle, fired, and the drone dropped. Kara snatched the weapon when he handed it to her. She mimicked his stance, awkward at first, but natural strength steadied her. She fired. The recoil jolted her, but the shot grazed the drone. Her tail lashed with frustration. "Again," Elias said firmly. They trained for hours. By evening, Kara's shots grew sharper, faster. She began to move while firing, using her agility to dodge and twist. Elias was impressed. Her instincts were raw but deadly when guided. The next day he added knives to the training. She took to them immediately, her movements almost too quick for his eyes. "You've done this before," Elias said, watching her slice through targets with ease. Kara's gaze darkened. She made a gesture, chains around her wrists, then stabbing motions. Elias understood. The Dominion had trained her for blood. Not choice, but command. Now at least she fought for herself. First strike. The first true fight came sooner than expected. It was dusk when Kara froze near the edge of the field, ears twitching. She hissed softly, pointing to the tree line. Elias lifted his rifle. Shadows moved among the trees, 5 Dominion scouts. Their armor glimmered faintly in the fading light. Elias and Kara dropped low behind the stone wall. His heart thudded steady, not fast. Old instincts had returned. "Wait," he whispered. The scouts crept closer, scanning the ground with handheld devices. They spoke in clipped tones, unaware of the eyes watching them. Elias waited until the lead scout crossed the wall. Then he fired. The man dropped with a metallic crash. The others shouted, raising weapons. Kara leapt from the wall, claws flashing. She tore into one soldier before he could aim, moving with feral speed. Elias covered her, dropping another with precise shots. The fight ended in less than a minute. 5 soldiers lay still in the grass. Kara crouched over one, breathing hard, claws dripping. She looked at Elias, expecting judgment. But he only nodded. "Good work." Her chest rose and fell. Slowly she straightened, ears flicking in pride. The Dominion responds. The bodies could not be hidden for long. Elias knew once they failed to report, the Dominion would tighten their net. He was right. The next day, ships thundered over the valley, dropping more soldiers. This time, entire squads. The colony stirred with fear. Rumors spread faster than wind. Some blamed Elias already, though no one said it to his face. At the council hall, Dominion officers declared their demands. The fugitive must be surrendered, or the colony would suffer. Some council members whispered agreement, but others looked uneasy, anger flickering behind fear. Humanity had fought too hard for its independence to kneel easily. Elias wasn't at the meeting, but he heard the talk afterward. He knew the storm was here. A dangerous decision that night. Elias sat by the fire, Kara across from him. He studied her face, the sharp lines, the golden eyes, the way her ears twitched at every sound outside. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Not until they have you." She shook her head, whispering, "No. Go. Me go." She mimed leaving, walking into the woods. Elias slammed his hand on the table. "No. They'll find you, Kara, and they'll take you back in chains." She flinched, but he softened his voice. "You're not alone anymore. You understand? Not alone." She looked at him for a long moment, then lowered her gaze. For the first time, she didn't argue. The rally 2 nights later, Corin came to the farm under cover of dark. His face was grim. "You killed those scouts, didn't you?" he asked. Elias said nothing. Corin sighed. "I'm not here to turn you in. Some of us are tired of the Dominion breathing down our necks. We remember what it was like before, when humans stood tall. If you're going to fight, you won't fight alone." Behind him, 3 other colonists stepped forward, farmers, miners, traders. Ordinary folk, but each carried a weapon. Kara watched from the doorway, eyes wide. Elias glanced at her, then back at Corin. He felt a familiar spark in his chest, the spark of comradeship. "Then we'll give them a fight they won't forget," Elias said. Preparing for war, the following days were spent in preparation. Elias organized drills, teaching the colonists how to fire, how to take cover, how to set traps across the fields. Kara moved among them, silent but quick, showing them tricks she had learned in her own harsh life. At first, the colonists were wary of her, an alien with claws and a predator's gaze. But when they saw her stand shoulder to shoulder with Elias, their fear began to ease. One boy, barely 16, asked her shyly to show him how she threw a knife. She demonstrated with sharp precision. The boy's grin spread wide. Soon others gathered, learning from her as much as from Elias. Slowly, she became part of them. The skirmish, the Dominion, struck at dawn. A squad of 10 soldiers stormed the settlement's edge, demanding compliance. But the colonists were ready. Hidden rifles cracked from rooftops. Explosives set in barrels erupted under enemy feet. Elias led from the front, Kara at his side, moving with lethal grace. The fight was brutal but quick. 3 colonists fell, but the Dominion squad was wiped out. For the first time, the colony tasted victory. And with it came courage. Aftermath. The people gathered in the square, rallying around Elias. Some cheered, others stood silent, but with fire in their eyes. "We showed them," Corin growled. "We're not slaves." "Not cattle. We're human." Kara stood among them, ears flicking as she listened. She didn't understand every word, but she understood the feeling. For the first time, she saw a people who did not bow, who fought not just for themselves, but for her as well. Later that night, by the fire, she sat close to Elias. Quietly, she spoke in broken words. "Humans. Fight for free, not empire." Elias looked at her and gave a rare smile. "That's right," her golden eyes glowed softly. "I fight too." A turning point. The Dominion would not forgive the losses. Elias knew the real battle was still ahead. But something had shifted. The colony was no longer afraid. They had chosen to stand, and Kara was no longer just a fugitive on his doorstep. She was a warrior, a partner, a symbol of what humanity could inspire in others. For the first time in years, Elias felt purpose burn in his chest again. The Dominion thought humans would hand over a girl because she was not one of them. They were about to learn what humans truly were. The night sky above the colony was filled with restless stars, scattered like shining dust across a black sea. Beneath that sky, the colony did not sleep. People worked in silence, passing crates of ammunition, moving spare power cells, preparing old defense turrets that had not been fired in years. Every corner of the settlement carried tension, as if the ground itself understood that war was coming. Elias Corr stood near the central plaza, his old uniform coat pulled tightly around his shoulders. The coat was worn and patched, but it still carried the emblem of humanity's fleet. That emblem, the silver wings over a burning star, reminded him of his duty, of the long years he had fought for human freedom. He never thought he would wear it again, but tonight it felt right. Beside him stood the feline girl. She was silent, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She had grown stronger since the night Elias found her. Her movements were steady, her shoulders straighter. She was no longer the lost, trembling fugitive who had collapsed on his doorstep. Yet deep down he could see the storm inside her. She feared losing this chance, this fragile hope she had found. "You do not have to fight," Elias said softly, keeping his voice calm. She shook her head. Her tail flicked once, a sharp movement of determination. "Fight with you," she answered in broken words. Her language was still forming, but her meaning was clear. Elias gave a slow nod. "Then we stand together." The colony gathered in silence as Elias stepped onto the makeshift platform. He looked at the faces around him. Miners with dirt on their clothes, engineers with tired eyes, farmers with rough hands. None of them were soldiers, yet each one had chosen to stand and fight. "The Empire thinks we are weak," Elias began, his voice carrying across the plaza. "They see us as small. They think we will bow, that we will give up one of our own without a fight. They are wrong." A murmur moved through the crowd. Elias raised his hand. "We are human. We do not kneel. Not for kings. Not for slavers. Not for anyone. This girl came to us with nothing. No name, no home, no future. And what did we do? Did we cast her aside? No, we gave her bread, warmth, and safety. Because that is what humanity is. We build hope where there is none. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is who we are." The crowd stirred louder now. Some clenched fists. Others nodded firmly. Elias's eyes burned with fire. "So tonight, when the Empire comes, we do not fight only for her. We fight for every man, woman, and child who dreams of freedom. We fight so that no one in this colony will ever live in chains. We fight because it is what we must do." A cheer rose up. It was not loud, but it was strong, steady, and unbroken. The hours passed quickly. Defense lines were set. Barricades built from metal crates and farming machines blocked the streets. Old turrets were powered up, humming faintly with unstable energy. The people took positions, hiding behind cover, clutching rifles, blades, or even tools turned into weapons. At the edge of the colony, the feline girl crouched beside Elias, scanning the horizon. Her sharp senses caught movements before human eyes could. Her ears twitched at distant sounds of engines. "They come," she whispered. Elias looked out across the night, and then he saw it. Shadows in the sky, black shapes blotting out stars. The Empire had arrived. The first dropships descended like claws tearing into the land. Dust and fire burst into the air as heavy armored soldiers marched out. Their armor glowed with pale lights, their rifles shining with deadly energy. At their front was a tall officer in silver armor, carrying a banner marked with the Empire's symbol, a broken chain over a crimson sun. The officer's voice boomed through a translator. "People of this colony, hand over the fugitive. Surrender her and you may live. Resist and we will burn this place to ash." Elias stepped forward, standing tall on the barricade. His voice was steady, strong enough to cut through the fear. "You want her?" he shouted. "Then you'll have to take her from us, and we will not make it easy." The feline girl bared her teeth in a silent snarl, her tail lashing like a whip. The officer raised his hand. "Then you have chosen death." The battle began. The Empire soldiers advanced in perfect formation, shields raised, rifles firing bright streaks of plasma. The colony answered with a storm of bullets, rockets, and turret fire. The air exploded with sound, crackling energy, roaring flames, and the cries of war. Elias moved through the lines, shouting orders, guiding people to cover, fixing broken weapons with swift hands. Though he was older, his voice carried strength that made others believe. He was more than a soldier now, he was a leader. The feline girl leapt from barricade to barricade, her movements too fast for the enemy to track. She carried only a blade and a scavenged energy pistol, but in her hands they became deadly. She struck like lightning, cutting through armor joints, vanishing into shadows before the enemy could fire back. She was not only fighting for herself, she was fighting for her new family. Despite their courage, the colonists struggled. The Empire soldiers were trained, armored, and many. One barricade fell, then another. The officer's voice thundered again. "You cannot win. Hand her over and I will spare your children." The people wavered for a moment, fear pressing down like a heavy weight. Elias saw it. He knew that hesitation could destroy them. He climbed onto the tallest barricade, standing in full view of the enemy, even as plasma bolts scorched the air around him. "Listen to me," Elias shouted to his people. "They think we are weak. They think we are afraid. But look at them, look at their fear. They hide behind armor and chains. They do not understand what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. We are not slaves. We are not property. We are human." His words cut through the chaos like a blade. The colonists roared, a sound louder than any weapon. Their fire redoubled, their courage blazing again. The feline girl leapt to his side, golden eyes shining. "Not alone," she said fiercely. "Never alone," Elias answered. The battle raged on. Hours felt like days. Bodies fell. Smoke choked the air, yet the colony held. At last the officer himself stepped forward, fury burning in his voice. "Enough!" He drew a great blade, crackling with energy, and charged. His armored form crashed through the barricades, scattering defenders like leaves in a storm. Elias met him head-on, his old rifle empty, but his will unbroken. The officer swung, and Elias barely dodged, the blade cutting deep into the metal ground. The feline girl darted in, striking at the officer's exposed side, but his armor held. With a backhand strike, he sent her crashing into rubble. She groaned but pulled herself up, refusing to stay down. The officer raised his blade again, ready to end Elias. But Elias, in one last act of defiance, hurled his broken rifle into the officer's face. The weapon struck hard, distracting him for a single breath. That breath was enough. The feline girl lunged faster than thought, driving her blade into the weak joint at the officer's neck. Sparks and blood burst as his body froze. With a final snarl, she dragged the blade across and the officer fell, his banner crashing to the ground. For a moment, silence fell across the battlefield. Then the Empire soldiers broke. Leaderless, their lines shattered, and the colonists surged forward with wild fury. One by one, the enemy fell or fled, until the dropships lifted off and vanished into the night sky, leaving the colony standing, bloodied, scarred, but unbroken. Dawn came slowly, light spilling across the battered settlement. Smoke still rose from the fields, and the ground was littered with broken machines. But the people stood tall. They had not been destroyed. They had endured. Elias walked through the plaza, exhausted but alive. Around him, colonists tended to the wounded, repaired defenses, and comforted one another. There was sorrow, but there was also pride. The feline girl walked beside him, limping slightly from her wounds. She no longer looked like a fugitive with nothing. She had fought, bled, and triumphed, and now the colony looked at her not with suspicion but with respect. A young boy approached her, offering a piece of bread with shaking hands. "Here," he said softly. She took it, eyes wide. Slowly she smiled, a small, fragile smile that carried more meaning than words. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see, you are not alone anymore. You have a place here, a future." Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "Home," she said. "Yes," Elias whispered. "Home." The colony had survived. The Empire would return one day, but that was a battle for tomorrow. For now, humanity had shown once again who they were, unyielding, defiant, and forever free. And the girl who had once been nothing now stood as proof of it.